This week, we review and discuss the final installment in the Skywalker Saga. So, pop some corn, grab a soda, and take a seat, because you're now listening to The Casual Cinema. Welcome back, everyone, to The Casual Cinema. I am one of your hosts, Josh, joined as always by Nathan, and this week we're talking about Star Wars. More specifically, Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker. Now, for context, we are recording this about 9 or 10 days after seeing it, so apologies if some things aren't fresh in our minds, but we will try our best. Now, it's also been quite some time since we've done a review. It's probably evident to you guys, so please bear with us. But anyway, this has been a highly anticipated movie, one that both of us have been pretty much, I guess, excited for. I think both of us have been excited for. We're both Star Wars fans. And just right off the bat, it's no surprise that we're going to get stuck into the story, and there's no better place to start than the Emperor's Return. Now, I have my own thoughts about this, and this is obviously going to be a spoiler review, but I'm obviously going to go throw it to Nathan first about his thoughts on Sheev's reappearance. Take it away.
It's me. I'm back. Welcome back to the Casual Cinema, everybody. Woo! All right. What do I think is Sheev's return overall? Look, I think it's good, and I like the idea of including the Emperor in this, but after hearing like some complaints that it almost ruins Darth Vader / Anakin's character arc, because, you know, now that Palpatine survived and now it's up to Rey to deal with him, that bit I'm kind of like, yeah, that's a good point. They've kind of undone the other 6 films and the whole point of the Chosen One and everything. But I heard some complaints about the way he looked. I really liked the zombie Palpatine. I thought that was really cool. And then you get the part at the end where he gets resurrected to his like normal form, and I thought he looked great. His dialogue probably could have been better. They reused a lot of lines that was kind of annoying. But overall, I do like his involvement in the story.
Yeah, so where I stand on this is, it's not good for me. I mean, I love the Emperor, but I do believe that his involvement in this movie feels like damage control for Disney, or whomever is involved in this movie. Because, look, there's a lot of people in the filmmaking process, and I could point fingers here, but I don't really want to. Whoever's decision it was to put him in this movie, it was a risky one, and one that I questioned not only throughout the film, but even before the movie's release. It was only reaffirmed when I did eventually see the movie that it seemed out of left field. And what I mean by that is it does feel as though they kind of decided, oh, we don't have a big bad guy, and obviously we want Kylo to turn to the light for some reason, which they didn't have to do, but we can get into that later. So they felt the need to have the big bad. And there's no one better than the Emperor, no doubt about that. I just feel that the way that they brought him back, atypical of a J.J. Abrams film, was to not explain it. It was to kind of go, he's back! And there was no reason as to how or why. And as you say, it somewhat diminished what Anakin had did. But I was more hung up on the how and why of it, as I said.
Yeah, I think it's quite sudden. I mean, you know, it's in the opening crawl. It's like, that's it, he's back. And you're like, wait, what? Because I think everyone was expecting to kind of be eased into the Emperor's return. But it's like, in the opening, bang, he's back. There's barely any explanation. It's like, oh, I was everyone. I'm Snoke. I was Vader's voice. And it doesn't make a lot of sense, especially with some of the stuff Snoke says and does in Last Jedi. It doesn't quite add up with things that Palpatine says and does in this movie. And it's kind of like, oh, was he really Snoke then? Because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's kind of like, does that mean he was controlling Snoke? Was he manipulating Snoke? Is Snoke merely a vessel? Obviously, we know he has clones of Snoke, but what is Snoke? Like, it doesn't answer the question of what is Snoke, as more or less it says, well, Snoke's kind of like a clone. And I guess we assume he's just a host to the Emperor.
I think I'm thinking he's not. I'm thinking he's a clone, but he's his own person, and obviously the Emperor's in charge of him because he knows about the strong connection between Kylo and Rey, and he actually says in Last Jedi he's the one that makes that connection where they can talk to each other from across the galaxy, and then Palpatine's shocked by it in this movie where he accidentally sucks the life out of them, and he starts regrowing. He's like, I can do this, and then he starts like taking the energy. He's like surprised by it at first. So, but Snoke already knew about it, so shouldn't Palpatine know about it? If he is Snoke, he should know about it. So I'm thinking maybe Snoke he is his own person. He's a clone that's like, controlled by Palpatine, much like the clone troopers themselves. And before he can tell Palpatine about, how Rey and Kylo's connection, he's killed off by Kylo before that.
Well, I guess he could almost act as a background agent or a puppet master, really. Like, he's not really there, he's not really pulling the strings, but he's set things up in such a way that he believes the puzzle pieces will all fit together. And they inevitably do. And, like, I guess the explanation is, oh, well, I knew Snoke was going to die, or I knew this.
Sorry, that's the weird thing about Palpatine's plan at the end as well. He has 3 different plans because one fails and then he goes into the next thing. And it's like, did he plan that, or is he just making this up as he goes along? It's like because he wants Rey to strike him down.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't. Kylo comes, and then his plan is. Well, no, she doesn't, and then his plan's to attack the fleet like he wanted the fleet there. And then Kylo comes, and then he starts sucking their life. Like, every time something goes wrong, he has his, next plan. Because it's like he wanted to be, killed, yeah? But then he ends up taking their life, and he's restored. So obviously he doesn't want to be killed anymore, yeah? It's like, but was that his plan from the beginning, or did he just make that up as he went along?
Honestly, I think it's more got to do with the fact that the writers were just making it up as they went along.
Well, yeah, the ending of the movie for me is the messiest part. There's characters dying and coming back to life every 2 seconds. I don't know.
It's very convoluted towards the end, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the way that Emperor or Palpatine is presented in this movie. I think that the explanation or lack thereof was just to go, oh well, the Palpatine's responsible for it all. And that's it. That's all you need to know. And either you can choose to go along with that and have fun with that, or after seeing the movie, I guess you have to sit back and think, well, hang on a minute. It can't just be, my plan all along was to have 3 plans, and I knew that 2 of them weren't going to work, so inevitably I was going to go to this other plan, or I sucked the life out of these 2 people, and now that's actually happening, and I'm happy with my plan. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, it's so convenient, isn't it?
It feels very much like they were just writing it and they were going, oh, we'll have this so that it feels like our heroes are in dire straits and they're going to lose. And then, hey, there's an uplifting moment, talking about later on in the movie when the fleet arrives. It's like, yay, our heroes will be fine. And then you have the moment where the Emperor shoots lightning into the sky and it's like, oh no, our hero's going to die. And then it's like, oh wait, no they won't, this will happen. And it's almost like they're trying to one-up themselves constantly and make it seem as though he knows, that he's got another plan up his sleeve, but it almost becomes comical. I don't think it's fully comical, but it's slightly ridiculous. I think
I do think the end got a bit ridiculous. It's it's trying to constantly surprise you and throw you off, but especially because I watched the movie twice, especially the second time, I was just like, wait, so what's his plan? he wanted to kill him, but he could suck the life out of them, but now he's alright. I don't know what's going on.
I was going to say, even his initial plan, which is like what's it called, the Final Order, I believe that's what it's called, and he's got all these Star Destroyers, like who knows how many? I'm assuming over 1,000. Looks like there's stacks, and they're like underneath. Are they underneath water or something? I don't know. I can't remember.
Underneath the ground.
The ground. He's got Star Destroyers underneath the ground, which he lifts up using the Force. But as we know, he doesn't really have the full power of the Force, unless the ships themselves have just been hidden underneath the ground. I don't know. But anyway, they come out of the ground. He's got stacks of them. They've got crews of they're manned by zombie Sith people. I'm not really...
No, I don't think so. What, the Star Destroyers?
Yeah, well, who else is on there? You don't see their faces. Remember, you don't see their faces.
You do. You see, like, admirals and stuff on them, and you see, like, the guys that look like the Death Star troops.
Well, no, but I assumed that they were the First Order troops, but then the rest of the ships had to be made up of just random sort of... I presumed they were zombies. That might be my bad. I mean, otherwise they could be those Sith followers, I guess, that we see in the big Colosseum type thing at the end of it, who are worshipping.
Which also doesn't really... Who are those people? This makes, like, no sense. What's going on? I think... Yeah, it's ridiculous how many Star Destroyers are. Who the hell's manning these things? And who are all these Sith acolytes? Like, fool this Colosseum. How did they get there? What are they doing? It's just... That for me was too much.
Well, it almost reaches a point where you sit there and you think, okay, so the Emperor has a fleet of seemingly infinite Star Destroyers hidden on the planet Exegol. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Okay, he's got the fleet. Why didn't he use the fleet earlier, and why has he waited until now to use it? Now, you might say, well, because... there was the New Republic and blah, blah, blah. I'm thinking, well, why didn't he use that just during the time of the Empire when the attack on Endor was happening?
Because it's not the actual plan. The actual plan is for Rey to kill him and take his place, and then she's meant to take command of the fleet and destroy the planets.
Right, but what I'm saying is that if all these Star Destroyers are Imperial Star Destroyers, not First Order Star Destroyers... Are we to assume that he put them there after the events of Return of the Jedi or before the events of Return of the Jedi? Because that's a lot of Star Destroyers if that's the case. And we know that it takes a while to build a Death Star. So I'm like, if these are all these Star Destroyers, how did he get them underneath the planet in the first place? You know what I mean?
Well, it's like how did he get there? Do they have like another wayfinder? Do they have like a third one? Like, I don't understand. That's the thing. How did he even get them there?
Yeah, I'm sorry to our listeners because I'm obviously hearing us rambling at the moment and it sounds confused because even we're confused.
Well, this is more for discussion than a review. We'll still give our score, but this is a spoiler discussion debate thing. So that's just what it is. It's us rambling, talk about it, enjoy. I think it's meant to be maybe they were built there, but again, how did they get all the shit there? It's just a planet, it's just rock, there's nothing there. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, and it's like hidden in a nebula, isn't it? Like it's hidden in some sort of cloud.
Yeah, there's all gravity wells and stuff. You have to have the wayfinder. You can't navigate it by yourself.
Right. I would assume that it's very difficult to navigate a Star Destroyer or any kind of massive ship through such a... I don't know. I feel like that's just...
Yet all the resistance ships come at the end.
Yeah, alright. Yeah, look, I think the more you think about it, the more it just doesn't make much sense. But again, I think that this speaks to the film and the whole story and the narrative itself, which obviously tries to go for visual splendor over... and I guess you could say, logical narrative.
Look, honestly, I enjoyed the movie. I think it's a really fun movie. But yes, when you stop and think about it, there is a lot of plot holes or like kind of stupid things that don't make a lot of sense. And you're just like, well, am I just supposed to just give up on caring about plot at all? I don't know.
Well, that's what I mean. I think that when they came to this movie, either they were just like, look, there's no way we can succeed with this. Let's just go all out and, try and do as much as we can. Or they honestly did try. I mean, they probably did. But my point is that I just think that the whole Emperor storyline came out of nowhere. I think that's something that can at least be agreed upon. The use of the Emperor comes out of nowhere. And the details that we learn, and that we'll talk about soon, are very questionable. And I personally would have liked it more if they just didn't even decide that they needed a higher enemy or higher power. I didn't really mean higher power, but I feel like if they just stuck to Kylo, it would have been like, all right, we're seeing him develop into an Emperor-type character. I don't need another Emperor.
That's what I was just thinking, and I almost think that's what Rian Johnson was setting up. Like, the fact that this half of this movie spent trying to undo the events of The Last Jedi, I think that was a huge mistake. I know people don't make the film, but for the sake of making a coherent trilogy that all interconnects, they should have followed a lot more threads that were left in Last Jedi, because there are good concepts in Last Jedi.
Yeah, I don't love The Last Jedi, but I get where you're coming from. I feel like when you're in this position and you're having to work with people, you have to compromise, right? And I feel like if there's a director and there's a writer who's come before you and he's made this movie, you can either sit there and say, right, well, some of these fans have said that they hated this movie because it did this. Or you can at least acknowledge the fact, all right, well, if they didn't like this about the movie, we'll try our best to fix that. But this is what actually happened in this film. And if we want our storyline to make sense, I guess we have to change our narrative so it can at least suit those events. And I feel like that didn't happen. You know what I mean? I feel like this is more of a direct sequel to The Force Awakens, minus the Luke stuff, than it is to The Last Jedi. Obviously, there are characters who are featured in it, like Rose, obviously, but it just feels like there's very much of a
featured is an overstatement.
Yeah, but there's obviously much more of a disconnect, and I feel like this is more obvious than even the events of, say, the prequels, which are still more consistent than this and The Last Jedi. I guess as sequels is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if Kylo was like, the Emperor type character, and then they could almost use the Knights of Ren, who are really underused in this movie, and there's really no point to having them. They could have been the minor enemy that's like sent out to hunt down Rey or the Resistance or whatever. And then, they still could have had the thing, because I think Kylo's the most, we'll get into characters later, but I think he's the most interesting character in this film. And they still could have done the thing with him turning to the light and everything, and then had maybe Hux get back in charge of the First Order or something, instead of just comedically killing him off, because, again, they made him a bit of a joke in The Last Jedi, so they're undoing that by just killing him.
Yeah, I mean, even if Kylo had one redeeming moment, even if he was in the wrong until the very end of the movie, where he's faced with a choice, and he doesn't have to pick up a blue lightsaber, he doesn't have to run and chase after Rey, but he has to do something that could lead to his death, but it also leads to the salvation of the Resistance. I think they totally could have done that. But we're talking about hypotheticals here, obviously, and there's so many hypotheticals, not only about this movie, but the entire trilogy, really.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, honestly, any Star Wars movie, look at the prequels, I'm sure everybody sits there and goes, oh, they could have done this, they could have done that. Of course,
I've done the same thing.
At the end of the day, it is what it is, and I really think this is the trilogy of, much like the original trilogy, well, I guess the first 6 films is about the story of Anakin and Darth Vader, not so much Luke, then this is really the story of Kylo Ren. When you watch the trilogy, he has the most interesting arc, by far.
Yeah, I guess the biggest problem, therefore, is that he's not the protagonist. And
I think honestly, I know we're all over the place here, but I think killing off him instead of Rey, I think was a big mistake, because they've basically, him turning good at the end, they're basically saying, okay, he's the actual protagonist, not Rey. Oh, but wait, we're going to bring her back to life and kill him, so now she was the protagonist the whole time. And that feels so cheap to me. I feel like Rey should have died. and Kylo should have been left to with this Skywalker legacy because it makes 100 times more sense. And I feel like it's better for Rey. Same way in Last Jedi it would have been better for Finn to complete his sacrifice. I think Rey should have completed her sacrifice here.
Yeah, I guess the idea behind it is that they can't let Kylo live much in the same way they couldn't let Vader or Anakin live because of the atrocities that they had committed, and that I understand.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I get that. Like, you've killed millions of people. Like, Kylo even killed his own father, so there's issues there, and I'm like, you can't necessarily let a character like that live, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have... I mean, I know this is a bit out there, but it doesn't mean you couldn't have killed both of them and had a character like Finn, perhaps out of more of an homage to the Jedi and respect to his friend, to Rey. He could have returned to Tatooine and put the lightsabers back as more of a thing of the Jedi are gone, like physically, but they're still like, obviously, I don't know, ghosts or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could have been a more of a symbolic moment rather than just rehashing Return of the Jedi per se.
Yeah, I think, or either keeping both Rey and Kylo alive. I just think that them feeling the urge like they have to kill one off, I don't think that's necessary. They could have kept them both alive. I don't know. Like,
oh, and that's a big...
Oh yeah, I mean...
Sorry, I was just going to say, that's a big part of why I'm not a massive fan of the ending, because I felt as though when it came to the end, for example, I'm just comparing trilogies here, so bear with me, but when it comes to the end of Return of the Jedi, you have the perfect positive ending, right? Like, the heroes win without a doubt, everyone's fine, nobody's hurt, the only one who's dead is Vader, but he did all these bad things, and he's redeemed himself somewhat, so it kind of makes sense. Everyone else, though, is A-okay. When it comes to Revenge of the Sith, you have almost a complete opposite to that, right? Because you have all these people have died, and there's a little bit of hope meant to leaning into the next movie, so you know what's coming, but you've also just seen all of this, you know, horrifying stuff. So I feel like when it came to this film, I would have liked it had they just met in the middle a little bit and understood that, yes, our heroes can win, but there has to be a cost. And I feel like that's why I kind of wanted Rey to die at the end of it, because I felt like there needed to be stakes. There needed to be something where it was like, they've won, but who has died? Like, who is now gone? And I felt like there wasn't that kind of ending. And I guess that's why it felt like Return of the Jedi, because when you ended it, there was no risk taken by the filmmakers. It was just, let's just end it in a way that is more safe, once again, rather than, hey, this makes more sense. I don't know if that, you know, enlightens what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I just think as well, look, clearly they've tried to cover way too much in this movie because they're, you know, trying to correct things or whatever. And I think the fact that they've decided to end the Skywalker Saga, I don't think that was always their plan. I feel like they were going to make 6 movies. For sure. I reckon 100% they were going to make 10, 11, 12. So now they've... Maybe that's why it doesn't, like, feel like a solid ending. It's like, well, we could still have more. It doesn't really feel like an ending. But then again, same with Return of the Jedi. It's like, there could be more.
Yeah, well, it ended abruptly in Return of the Jedi, really, because you had this big, massive battle, and then they're all on Endor, and it's kind of like that loose end of, well, the Empire's still out there. Obviously, the Emperor and Vader are dead. You've cut the head off the, you know, snake, but the body's still there. So it's kind of like, when I personally felt that when it came to the end of Return of the Jedi. But with this movie, I guess they wrapped it up more. But they wrapped it up more because, once again, it's an ending of, well, all these ships are controlled by an antenna array, and if we take out the antenna array, then basically all the ships can't fly. And it was very much, of course, I was just sitting there going, are we really doing this? Like, are we really doing the big laser in the sky?
The really funny thing about that is it's on the ground, so it's like they have to do a ground assault because they can't get past the Star Destroyers, which, yeah, they can, because how'd they get on the ground in the first place? And then, but then they relay it to the Star Destroyer instead, and there's the signal towers on the Star Destroyer. And they're like, and then they ground assault the Star Destroyer, which is cool, it's something we've never seen before, but it's like, Well, now that's on the Star Destroyer, can't Poe just shoot it?
Yeah, I feel like that again. You're saying something else that just personifies this film. It's like that's cool, but you guys realize you could just do this other thing, which is way easier, right? Like I feel like that's the movie as a whole. Like, there are parts where you're just like, do this instead.
Yeah, because it blows up and it's literally a shot of Poe like flying right next to it, and I was like, why didn't you just shoot it?
Yeah,
And also, the on the Star Destroyer, it's a spaceship. It's not an actual ship. I mean, even an actual ship in water, you can, turn hard to one side. But couldn't they just flip the ship on the side and everybody would fall
yeah,
off?
pretty much. But then I guess the question would be, wouldn't everyone in the bridge then like fall, or everyone in the ship would like tip over or something? Because if I'm getting full sciencey,
That's a good point. That's a good point,
If I'm
actually.
getting full sciencey, when you're in space and you have a spaceship, generally you have inertial dampeners, so that everybody's like everybody's mimicking, or the ships themselves are mimicking Earth atmosphere, right? And if they weren't, then everyone would be floating like 0G. So if your ship is in an atmosphere, your inertial dampeners wouldn't necessarily be working, so you'd just be relying on whatever atmosphere that planet has. Anyway, I guess that's why they didn't tip the ship over.
I suppose that's true. I guess they're strapped into the Falcon and like a starfighter. So I guess good point. So
No, I get it. The whole point though about Poe shooting the dish, that's fine. Like he easily could have just shot that and it would have been a-okay. Regardless of that, it does the same thing Return of the Jedi does, where there's like a billion TIE fighters or just all these ships, and they have a tiny little fleet. And somehow, majority of them, or at least most of them, are fine. And I'm like, how? How are you guys okay? You have like 20 fighters and you're going up against like hundreds upon hundreds of fighters.
yeah.
That's a little nitpick, I guess. That's a little nitpick, but it's just something to think
something
about.
I noticed about the end as well. You never see like any good guys really get blown up as well. It's kind of like it's weird. And when Palpatine shoots his lightning into the sky, really, it just like EMPs the ships. It doesn't like blow them up.
Yeah, it's a little.
It's not. It's not like It's energy. It's like force energy. It's not like an actual like just a beam of electricity.
Yeah, and the thing is, he has to keep doing it. And when Rey stops him, all the ships fly again. It's like, well, hang on, what? So it's like a temporary EMP.
And like again, it feels like it did nothing. Like they should have had some shots of like some of the good ships like crashing into shit and blowing up. Like I don't know. It just feels like everything the bad guys did nothing. Like,
it's the same thing though. Let's be honest. It's the same thing that happened in Last Jedi. It's the same thing that happened in Force Awakens. And that's why I feel like there was no stakes in this movie, because at the end of it, you knew everyone was going to be okay, or at least your central characters were going to be okay. And I wanted someone to not be okay. I was like, at one point, Poe gets shot, and I was like, oh, cool, someone's actually been hurt. Like, like when you see Finn in The Force Awakens get slashed in the back by Kylo, and then you realize the time between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi is like, I don't know, like, isn't it like a few days or something? And then Finn's back on his feet, like in the next movie, which is days later. You're like, okay. But here it's the same thing. It's like, I wanted to see people hurt. I wanted to see people dying. It's the last movie and there's no stakes.
well, I guess because he's basically invincible. But I was gonna say, I mean, just quickly saying, if you were in The Mandalorian, you see the good guy get shot around and like beat up all the time, and it's kind of interesting seeing that. It's like he's not like a perfect like gunslinger or anything.
Well, yeah.
He's kind of bit shit, to be honest.
That's what makes
like he's a good shot, but he gets beat.
Well, I know we're on that topic, but I think that's why The Mandalorian as a character subsequently works. Like, he's not necessarily the most fleshed out character, but he's fallible, right? He can get hurt. He's not a perfect hero in the sense that physically he's in danger, right? And I feel like in this movie, no one was physically in danger. And in terms of the Falcon, the running joke that it never works, I feel like they've just almost, I know I've just said it, but they've kind of run it into the ground. Like, you know what I mean? I know they do that in the movie, pardon the pun, but it has just been so overused to the point where it appeared in Empire, and it was like, oh, the ship doesn't work, we're in an asteroid field, we can't jump to hyperspace. Fair enough. And then it's like, yeah, it just never works in general now. It's like, it's always breaking down, it's like, it's always getting damaged, it's always breaking in some sort of way, and in this movie they're fixing it so easily. Like, it's like, oh, we did hyperspace skipping, which was cool, but it's like, oh, that will, damage this piece of the ship, but it's okay, we fixed it in about 5 movie magic moments. It was just like, it's all good now, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's weird.
But it's just so they can jump from, I guess, setting to setting, right? Like, I mean, that's another big part of the story, and just moving from the Emperor, talking about what was the first half of this movie, which, if I'm being completely honest with you, I barely remember the specifics. Like, I know they were going after some dude's ship. I don't remember his name. I know they got the dagger. I know they were obviously trying to find the Wayfinder. And they ran into all the characters like Zori Bliss and Dio and all that. But
yeah, well, it starts off with if you don't remember, the movie starts off with Kylo Ren, which on apparently Mustafar,
yeah,
with trees now, and he finds the first Wayfinder. Then we see Palpatine. Very quickly, wasn't expecting that, and then it goes to Rey training with Leia.
Yep.
Which is interesting. I mean, and I thought the way they used Leia in this movie was nice. It was good to see her included, I think.
Yeah, I think for me, Leia's inclusion was both good and bad, because, again, from, I guess, one side of things is it's nice to see Carrie Fisher, right? But the other side of that is she's so apparent. It's so apparent that she's been chucked into this film that it's almost like, okay, does she really need to be here? Like, I feel like it would have been fine if she had just died in the last one, and it would have been like, right, okay, all good, move on. But then, of course, they would have killed not only her, but Luke, and that would have just been too much. But yeah, I just felt like her inclusion was nice, but it wasn't impactful, or it wasn't integral to the plot, not necessarily the characters, but the plot. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had little footage to work with, and it becomes a bit messy when you have to write the dialogue around an already existing dialogue that was cut from a film.
Yeah.
So, like, it's not easy, but it was good to see her, and yeah, and some of it's okay, some of it's a bit that was kind of didn't work. But no, it was nice. Anyways, moving on from that. Yeah, I actually don't remember.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, they know about Exegol.
Go on.
It's in the transmission from Palpatine, and then she looks in the sacred Jedi text that she took, and it has, tells you about the Wayfinder, and then they go to that desert planet.
Yeah.
And then that's the guy that he's a Jedi hunter or something.
I don't remember.
For some reason, his ship is just parked in the middle of the desert. No one no one scrapped it or anything. Yeah,
what the hell was up with that? No one touched. I was gonna say no one touched it. I was like, what is going on? And then...
Do you know what? I did like when they first got to that planet, that Festival of Life or whatever it was. That was really cool, because that's something we haven't seen before, and I really liked all the colours.
Yeah, it was a bit convenient, though. They're like, oh, it happens every 42 years. I'm like, really? 42 years? Like, you realise that it's a reference, though, because it was the 42nd anniversary of A New Hope. So they were saying, it happens every 42 years, and I was like, wink, wink,
yeah,
wink.
But, that doesn't matter. It was just a funny little thing. It's like, lucky us. Huh? I don't know. It's just a little joke. It doesn't really matter. But yeah, I thought that was really cool. Yes, I agree. The every 42 years is a bit unnecessary. But yeah, I like that scene.
Yeah, and then Lando pops up, yeah.
Yeah, Lando's appearance, I was going to say.
Yeah. I mean, we can probably get into it a little bit.
Are we going to talk about Lando?
A little bit, yeah. Okay, so this is how I feel about Lando. I liked Lando in this movie, but why the hell did they put him in the last movie? It seems so stupid. Like, he pops up, and I'm like, oh, it's here, and he's in it, and he's really good. I'm like, cool. Why is he in the last film? Like, why didn't he pop up earlier?
I totally agree, and he always said that he would come back and do it. And I'm thinking the whole time, okay, well, why isn't he in Force Awakens? Why isn't he in Last Jedi? And you see him acting, and I swear he's a better actor now than he was when they filmed the original trilogy. He's probably a better actor than Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill. Honestly, he was so good in this movie, and I wanted to see so much more of him. He was barely in it, and it just made me sad.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this whole trilogy, they're including these legacy characters for nostalgia and then doing them dirty.
Yeah, it's always happened. It's always over. It happened with Han, they killed him. And then they bring in Luke, and they did him the dirty with, not necessarily being true to his character and, having him die at the end of Last Jedi. Like, all right, who else is going to die? And they bring in Lando, and you're like, oh, cool, Lando. It's like, oh, he's only in a few scenes. Fair enough.
I think Leia was done pretty well, to be honest. I don't think there was even a plan to kill her if they kind of had to do that because she passed in real life. I liked Han's death in Force Awakens. Honestly, that's probably one of the best scenes in Force Awakens. It's a really well done.
It's very obvious though. Like, it's so apparent that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I know, but it's a good bit of dialogue, and
obviously I was going to say, I know we were kind of leaning into it, but the scene that they do recreate in this movie, I guess I don't have a major issue with it. It's just one of those things.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird because Han's there, and he's not a ghost. He's like a memory. He says, "Oh, you're just a memory," or maybe Leia's showing him to Kylo or whatever. But I did like it, and I liked how it paralleled that scene, and you had the reference to Ben cracks up and he's gonna say, he's like, Dad, and he's gonna say I love you, and Han goes, I know. Classic reference to Empire. And I liked it because it's like, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have strength to do it. Same line from Force Awakens, and then he does the right thing this time, which is choose the good route instead of the bad route, because he made a mistake in Force Awakens, and that's why I think he has the best character arc, because he really comes full circle in this movie.
Yeah, well, I guess if we're talking about characters, I think Kylo across the three movies, maybe not Last Jedi, and I can talk about that in a second, but I think that he does have at least the more interesting arc. I don't think his character has a particularly great or amazing arc. I think it's fine. I think it's serviceable. Obviously, it mirrors Vader's. He's slightly different. Obviously, in the events of The Force Awakens, he is a different character to Vader, but he is pretty much the same and has the same sort of resolution. I guess my concern is just what we talked about, right? The cohesion between the movies, and the fact that when you look at The Last Jedi, he starts the movie in one place and he ends the movie in the exact same place, right? So that when you jump into this film, and you know full well he's done all these bad things, when he turns good, I just felt a little annoyed that they went down the same route that they did with Vader. I was a little bit like, as somebody obviously who wants to see something new from these movies, I had hoped that they kept him evil. And a lot of other people did, and I think that that's simply because of the fact that he killed his dad, and it was just it takes away from the moment that he does kill Han, right? It takes away from that moment in The Force Awakens now when you go back and watch it, because you're now just did they get rid of Han because Harrison Ford didn't want to do it anymore? Yes, they did. But now it feels like, well, that doesn't matter anymore because, as we know in The Last Jedi, he doesn't develop as a character. Like, we know that he's evil at the end of Force Awakens. He's evil at the end of Last Jedi. Like, he doesn't change. He's still the bad guy. And then when it comes to this movie, obviously he turns. He obviously becomes good. And under different circumstances, that would have been fine. If it happened earlier, if it happened in a movie prior to this, I think it would have been fine. But to have it happen in the last movie, much in the same way that it happened to Anakin in Return of the Jedi, it means that there's more comparisons that can be drawn between the two films. That's my only complaint. That's how I feel about it. It's not that it's bad. Again, we're talking about another interesting idea that I think they've just executed it poorly and they've done it at the wrong time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think it was pretty much set up that he was going to become the good guy. I think, like, he was obviously struggling. You know, he almost didn't kill Han Solo.
Yeah.
You can see it in his face in that scene, and then.
Well, I think that's the performance more so than anything else. That's just Adam Driver being a really good actor.
But what I like about him is you do see him develop over the 3 movies, and like by this one, he's like the way he fights and the way he's like a lot more like Vader. Whereas you watch Force Awakens, he's this really like conflicted, like whiny character.
Yeah, I really don't like him in the Force Awakens.
Yeah, but it's a setup. Yeah, it's a setup, and you see him become this, aggressive, like, Sith Lord.
Yeah, I think that he gets aggressive in this movie, though. Like, you know what I mean? I think that by this movie he's aggressive, but I don't think he's aggressive in The Last Jedi, because obviously he's still under Snoke's boot.
No way! You see, that's why they have that opening scene of him just slaughtering everybody, because they're showing how evil he is now.
No. I meant that in this movie he's aggressive. I meant that in The Last Jedi he's not. He's still what he was in The Force Awakens. That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like in this movie, yes, he definitely assumes the Darth Vader mantle more. But in The Last Jedi, they didn't really develop him because he just sort of stayed the same. Like, he tosses Hux around in The Last Jedi. So again, I feel like JJ probably had, or whoever was in charge had an idea of where this character was going. It's just the fact that because we had conflicting ideas as to what Star Wars should be, or at least how these movies should be, it ultimately acted almost like a wrench being thrown into the mix that just kind of made the character not very cohesive. That's all I'm saying. Like, yes, he's villainous in this movie. Yes, he's more like Vader. But it meant that they kind of skipped over that in Last Jedi.
Well, they don't. That's the thing about Last Jedi. It doesn't develop any of the characters, and that is why this movie struggles a lot. And we're being given backstory on Poe, and it's like, why are we getting his backstory in the 3rd film?
And it's the same with Rey.
Why are we getting Rey's backstory in the 3rd film? Why are we finally explaining Finn's Force sensitivity in the last film? Like, why are you doing this now? And it's because creative differences, and they let someone come into the middle movie, do whatever he wanted, basically made his own episode 1 of this trilogy. And yeah, I mean, this movie suffers for it, and I think it should have been either 3 hours long or split into 2 parts. If it's the end of the saga, they could have just done 10 episodes, nice round number, that's it. But again, that's risky from a business perspective. If the part 1 doesn't do well, then part 2 doesn't make money. So Disney, there's no way they're going to do that. And I feel like this movie doesn't run for 3 hours because it's a kids' film, and kids ain't going to watch a movie for that long.
Yeah, well, at least they're attracting a much larger audience of different ages, and there's no way they're going to have a 3-hour movie. That being said, we can say, well, Avengers Endgame was 3 hours, and now it's the highest-grossing movie of all time. So I guess they could have gone to 3 hours. I just think they didn't because they thought perhaps it would make the movie feel more like a... Maybe they were scared. Who knows? Maybe they were scared of
I think they were because, and I feel like Endgame doesn't work because that's like if Infinity War compared to Last Jedi is an amazing movie and a great setup for Endgame, so obviously people are going to go see it. Whereas, people were boycotting this movie and hating on it before it was even released because of Last Jedi. So it's risky for Disney to extend it
Yeah.
more than 2.5 hours. Yeah, Endgame was like that was was bound to succeed from the get go, the way I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I
Well, speaking of Endgame, um, this movie stole the ending
oh
from that film.
oh yes, it did with the
It has the ships coming out of hyperspace, which is like Doctor Strange's portals. You know, Poe's like, "Oh, we're gonna lose," same way Captain America's like, "We're gonna lose." You know, on your left, and then Lando's like, "Don't worry, we haven't lost left," or something. And you know, they come out of hyperspace, same as all the heroes running out of Doctor Strange's portals. And then, of course, you have the dialogue at the end where, you know, Sidious goes, "I am all the Sith, same as I am inevitable," and then Rey goes, "And I am Iron Man. I mean, all the Jedi."
yeah, I honestly
and kills the bad guy.
I honestly think that there was probably
and it kills her, much like it killed
yeah,
Iron
but
Man.
now she gets
Although
brought
then
back.
she's brought back to
Yeah.
life.
I think that
I wish Iron Man was brought back to life.
I think that has more to do with the fact that there were behind the scenes issues. We know that there were multiple endings to this movie, or we had heard that there were multiple endings to the movie. Whether or not that's true is a completely different story. All of it's just hearsay. But my guess is if there were, then it would not surprise me at all if they were inspired by other movies that Disney at the time were making and went, hey, they did really, really well with that movie. Let's do something like that. And it's
they obviously thought it was a safe ending,
Yeah.
and I don't know, and I didn't hear about alternate endings, but apparently it was confirmed that there were reshoots, as there has been with all these Star Wars movies, and yeah, you can tell this movie's been cut down from at least a 3-hour film, if not more. You can tell this is being cut down, and that's why it just goes from beat to beat. They never slow down, because all those slow moments are cut out, because clearly someone at Disney, some producer or whatever, whether it was Kathleen Kennedy or some other producer, has watched it and gone, "Oh, this part's boring, let's just keep going with the action," or whatever, and they cut out Yana being Lando's daughter. So instead you have this weird, creepy scene where they talk at the end. That doesn't make any sense. But apparently Lando on the desert planet, he's not just on that desert planet because Luke and him fail and he stays there for
I was going to say, yeah.
zero reason. Apparently he tells them that the First Order kidnapped his daughter and he doesn't know where she is, so he's just laying low there until he hears word from her or something. That's just where he's chosen to stay.
Yeah, and that would have made way more sense, and it would have been a really interesting character arc and a development for Lando and Yana or Jaina or whatever her fucking name is.
Yeah, it's Jana, but I think it's pronounced Yana.
Yeah, I think that this movie, as you say, it's a 3-hour film that they've cut down. And honestly, I would have preferred a 3-hour film. If Endgame can do it, this movie can do it. You just need to have more faith in the film itself. And I would have rather had a movie that had slow beats that at least explained things, rather than a movie that just constantly threw something new at me and left me very little time to not only ponder but consume that material. And that's how I felt with the first half of the movie. It just felt like stuff was being chucked at me, and I was like, okay, I've got no issue with this, but you guys aren't like giving me any time to digest it.
Yeah, I agree, but I think even if it went for 3 hours, it's the same movie. All the same plot holes are there. We just have more exposition. Is that really a better film?
Yeah, well, it's the same with Batman v Superman, right? Like, people say the ultimate cut is way better than the normal cut. And I'm like, yeah, well, it fixes some things, but Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor is still there, and he's annoying as hell. You know what I mean? Like, the problems that plagued the initial version of the movie are still there. You've just added some stuff to give the movie context. And I feel like that, exactly as you say, that could have done the same thing with this movie. The same problems could have still been there. They would not have explained why the Emperor was there. I can probably guarantee that. But that may have developed other areas of the movie. And there's things that, like, I didn't even realize this till after the movie, but I remember them saying that Matt Smith, the British actor who played Doctor Who, was cast in this film, right? He's nowhere to be seen in the movie.
Apparently it was a rumor. It wasn't actually confirmed from what I saw.
Well, I thought it was like, he is cast.
Oh, I don't know.
Because
But,
Dominic Monaghan, who plays one of the Resistance members in the movie, he's in it, and both of the cast announcements were done at the exact same time. So I'm like, well, it would have been official if he's in the movie. Where's Matt Smith? So there was rumors whether or not his character was in a different version of the film that they inevitably cut when they did reshoots. So it was kind of like, well, who really knows? We'll never know. That's the truth. But it's just one of those things where it was like, okay, he's not in it. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I like how John Williams had a little cameo.
Yeah,
That was nice.
Finally gets one.
Yeah, it's good to wrap it up since he's composed them all.
Yeah.
Actually, speaking of that, the music, although it takes a lot of the old music, but it evolves the old music, like the old themes and stuff. And I thought the score in this movie, out of the entire trilogy, was the best score. I feel like Force Awakens was a very forgettable one. Last Jedi, nothing stood out. This one, the score and the music was really nice. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah.
if I'm being honest, it wasn't as standout as, say, the music in the prequels, which, despite all the issues those movies had, the music in the prequels was, like, fantastic, you know what I mean? And I feel like in these, it hasn't been, as you say, going on all cylinders. So I feel like in this last film,
it's been a bit bland. And don't get me wrong, he's a fantastic composer, and it's beautiful music, but it just really faded into the background, I felt.
Well, it's because he's kind of getting on, he's getting older, but I think it's also the fact that he's being directed to make music, right? And he has a director who would probably say, what kind of music do you think fits this and fits that and yada, yada, yada. And if Disney inevitably are just, recycling some, not all, but if they're recycling some scenes or moments from previous films in the franchise and they're trying to evoke a certain emotion that may have happened in A New Hope or Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, then they're going to be using the same music. Unlike the prequels, which, almost exclusively used new music, which is, I guess, one of the highlights of it, as I said. So I have no issue with the music in this film. I didn't really notice it so much, maybe because I was so tuned into the story, or attempting to fathom the story. And probably one of the major... if I'm being honest, one of the major blunders for me, and we can talk about it now, which was Rey and her backstory, which kind of baffled me, if I'm being completely honest. I was really surprised that they did this, and it was really unusual, and I don't know why they just chose to go with this route, but the decision to make her the Emperor's granddaughter,
Well, it's because they brought Palpatine back, and what's the best way to link Palpatine into this movie, right? That's all it is. It's because they wanted to bring Palpatine back.
Well, I also feel like it's because they thought people were disappointed with the fact that she wasn't related to anybody, so they had to relate
I hated
her.
that, and I wanted them to fix that in this movie.
And I had no issue with them relating her, but as I said to you, I feel like it would have been so much easier if they just went, she's a clone of someone. Like, she's a clone.
Yeah, because it's set up in the Force vision in Last Jedi. She sees a whole row of herself. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, it made sense for her to be a clone.
I didn't get it. I was just like, what the hell?
Now that Force vision, much like a lot of things in Last Jedi now, mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah, because
how can you have an inaccurate Force vision? That's not how it works. Luke's one on Dagobah is because you see Luke's face in the helmet. It's like, well, that can either be reference to him being his father. It's also a reference to Luke having a chance of becoming evil, right? It has a double meaning.
Yeah,
and so it has a meaning regardless, right? You can depict a meaning from that. You can't depict a meaning from the Last Jedi one, except either she's a clone or she's no one.
Yeah.
Not that she's a fucking Palpatine. There's nothing there, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I just didn't. I was so disappointed. I was just like, why did you do that? Like, it's not horrible, but it makes the other movies, like, not even this trilogy, it just makes the other 6 films even more nonsensical. I was just like, wait, what? Like, hang on a minute. Are we supposed to believe that Sheev had a son, and then that son had a wife, and then they had a baby, and that was Rey? It was so out of nowhere.
I don't have an issue with that when, he's the most powerful man in the galaxy, can, have whatever woman he wants, right? It doesn't matter what he looks like. The issue I have there is, well, was his son and not Force sensitive? Does his, unlimited power just skip a generation?
Yeah, that's exactly. It's just like, what?
But I think the son obviously ran away from him. Maybe he cut himself off from the Force, which we now know which is an ability that's canon now because of Luke in the game. So maybe he cut himself off from the Force, so he couldn't be found.
I mean, yeah, look, definitely it's a possibility. It was just something that was so... Again, it's like the Emperor's very inclusion in this movie. It's just so out of left field, and it makes very little sense. Like, it's not that it's not a bad idea. If you told it in the right way and gave us time to dwell on it, like you've said before, like the idea that Luke found out that Vader was his dad in Empire Strikes Back, you had time to kind of think about it, and then it was explained a little bit more when it came to Return of the Jedi, right? I just feel like you've already...
Yeah, I did say that. Imagine if you found out that Darth Vader was Luke's father in Return of the Jedi, you'd be like, no, that's not true. That's impossible.
Well, you kind of just... You're even quoting it. But yeah, it's that idea of... And then you just would have had Luke fight him. And then Luke would have beaten him. And then he would have been like, father. And then he would have taken his helmet off. And that still would have gone the same way. And you would have been like, wow, this movie, what the hell? Like, it would have just thrown so much. It's just weird.
Because you have the gap between Empire and Return of the Jedi. So, Luke's had time to process this information and accept that and decide what he wants to do about it.
And he speaks with Obi-Wan and Yoda about it. He talks to them,
exactly.
and that makes sense because it gives you context, right? And I feel like in this case, they didn't necessarily need to show flashbacks if they could have had particular characters talk to Rey about this, right? Like, they could have had people who knew about it perhaps talk about it, but no one knows about it. And that's what makes it seem so out of left field. Like, if someone had known about it, you could tell they would have told her. And, like, Luke doesn't tell her about it. Obviously, Carrie Fisher's dead, so they can't have her talk to her about it. So it just doesn't work.
But I don't know if you remember from the film, but apparently they knew the whole time. Luke and Leia knew she was Palpatine's granddaughter.
But they never said
time.
that.
Yeah, they said that in the film. Rey goes, "What, you knew?" And then Luke goes, "Yeah, so did they." Oh, he said, "What, Leia knew?" And he goes, "Yeah, so did I." And then Rey goes, "Then why did she agree to train me?" And it's like, "Oh, because, I don't know, we saw good in you," or some shit like that. I don't know. But that's what they try and explain it as when Luke reconnects to the Force, he knows, and apparently Leia's known since Force Awakens. They, sense it straight away.
It doesn't make any sense. That's what's annoying. It's like...
it's a lot of plot holes because it's like, well, first of all, why would you train in the first place? Or B, why wouldn't you start training her straight away?
Yeah, that's the point, and that's why you can tell that they freaking chucked it in the last movie because they felt like, again, they're in damage control and they have to give Rey some sort of backstory. So they thought, oh, we'll make her a granddaughter. Because otherwise, if this was actually planned, the seeds of it would have been seen in the other movies. But they're not.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's no way Luke just was going to let her run off from the island after realizing it was Palpatine's granddaughter.
Of course.
That's ridiculous.
And he's Luke. He would have freaking known somehow. Like, that's what doesn't work.
That's what I'm telling you. Apparently he knew. That's canon. He knew in Last Jedi that Rey was Palpatine's granddaughter. That's what I'm telling you. But then when you watch the movie, it makes no sense because why wouldn't he, put in more effort to train her once he reconnects to the Force?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just another one of those things.
Unless it's meant to be he finds out later from Yoda or something. I don't know. But apparently Leia knew the whole time. Somehow.
Yeah, and we all know that's BS because it's just behind the scenes thing. It's exactly the same as Maz Kanata in The Force Awakens when they're talking about Anakin's lightsaber going, that's a story for another time. It's like, so she does know, but we're not going to find out how. She's got the lightsaber, but we're not going to ever find out how she got it. You know what I mean? It's that same thing. It's like Leia knew, And it's like, didn't she tell Ray earlier? Well, it's okay. You don't need to know that. It's like, that's kind of important.
Well, it's funny because they've given us. Apparently, they have the backstory for Luke's lightsaber now, and it's the most boring, stupidest thing. She could have just told them. It's just like a guy finds it and then sells it to Maz Kanata. It's like something stupid like that.
On. What the hell is that?
They've just done a cop out. It's a why is it? Oh, that's a story for another time. That's barely a story. Just say, oh, I bought it off someone. They're done.
It's such a dumb freaking excuse. Like, you know what? Again, it's that thing of, oh, we didn't really know when we were making the movie, so we decided we would try and explain it later on. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't be bothered explaining something when you're writing a script, so you've decided to explain it either 2 movies later or in some piece of lore or something like that that's came after the fact. It's annoying. It's like, no, I need that now, not later. You know what I mean? It's just annoying. It's frustrating. And that's what I feel about this movie. Just lots of things were revealed, and there's no context. There's no reason for it. None of it's been built up at all. It happens. There's nothing wrong with these ideas. It's the execution. Once again, it happens all the time throughout the sequel trilogy. It's like the stuff in The Last Jedi. There's nothing wrong with that. It's the way it's executed. Force Awakens, same story all over again. The stuff in there is fine. It's just how they're dealing with it. And the same goes for this movie. All these ideas, all these events are all interesting. It's the manner in which they're presenting them to the audience that's the problem. And it's hard for me to watch this, right? Like, I was watching it and I'm enjoying parts of it, but then how can I enjoy some parts of it when I'm being told something about this universe or a certain character that just doesn't correlate with all the other, 8 films I've watched up until this point? Like, it's just really, really conflicting.
Yeah, I think overall it's an enjoyable film, but it is disappointing from a fan perspective for sure.
It's just, there were times, honestly, where I wished I was watching Phantom Menace or Attack of the Clones, because their issues are different. The issues aren't necessarily the story, and the story themselves in those movies is dull, and it's pretty boring, and they have moments where the plot gets really slow and the pacing has issues. But when watching this movie, it just felt like the issues were so important because they affected the narrative in ways that I couldn't fathom. Like, I was just like, this changes how I look at the original trilogy. It changes how I look at the prequel trilogy. I mean, how am I supposed to, through the prequels, I'm supposed to believe that Anakin's the chosen one, and then I kind of think it's Luke in the original trilogy, but then I'm reaffirmed at the end of Return that it is Anakin, because he kills Darth Vader, stands up, he chucks the Emperor over the thing, he falls down the chute. It's like, right, done. And I thought that they had to bring Anakin back in some way or another at the end of this film. They had to, because they had the voices moment where all the Jedi's voices were there, and I thought, you have to have Anakin. You can't. If he is the chosen one, you cannot have him not defeat the Emperor. Do you know what I mean? And as we know, the Jedi can use the Force beyond the grave. I mean, if Luke can lift X-Men...
I think that's specific to... Is it Acto, whatever that planet's called? On that planet, the ghosts aren't as transparent. They're like, you see Luke and Yoda as ghosts on that planet. They're like, it looks like they're actually standing there and they just have a blue outline.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, maybe that's just the effect for the sequel trilogy. But no, at the end on Tatooine, when you have Luke and Leia's ghosts, they're fully transparent. So I think on that planet, because it's, one of the first, Jedi temples or whatever, I think it's very, Force-sensitive planet, so the ghosts can interact on that planet. They can grab things and call down lightning. I don't think they can do that.
Yeah, but my point isn't that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that if that is the case, we're not told that. Do you know what I mean? It's implied, and that's what frustrates me. And even if that's the case, Exegol is meant to be a Force-sensitive planet.
Yeah, but it's a Sith planet,
not
a Jedi
planet. Come on, we're getting into... It's like semantics. It's like... Oh, well, it's not a good Force planet. It's a bad Force planet.
What did you want to happen? You want Anakin to stand behind Rey and do a father and son Kamehameha. What do you
Well,
want?
no, I just mean that he is the chosen one. Do you know what I mean? That's nothing against Rey, even though I hate her character. But
Yeah, so is that what they've done now? Is Rey the chosen one? Is that what we're supposed to believe?
I don't believe it because George Lucas outlined that Anakin is the chosen one, and even at Hayden Christensen's line when he speaks to her is, "I brought balance. Now it's your turn," or something like that.
Yeah,
So he is the
rise up and as I.
Well, that's Obi-Wan's one, but yeah, his one is about bringing balance, right? He said he did it, so you have to.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's like this. It's like, okay, so he is the chosen one, and it's like, then how the hell does this, like, besides Kylo, how does this relate to the Skywalker Saga? Because if that's the case, then the entire point of Rey's character has been to be a character reveal. That's it. The entire point of her character is that the mystery surrounding her is about who she is. And if her entire purpose is just to be a character reveal so the audience goes, oh my god, she's this person, it's then like, well then who is she outside of that? Do you know what I mean? Like when you think about Luke Skywalker in A New Hope, you're told that he's the nephew of Uncle Owen and Aunt Maru, and that his father died in the Clone Wars, or he was killed by Darth Vader, and that his father fought in the Clone Wars. You're given that information. Yes, it's the incorrect information, especially the stuff about his father, by Obi-Wan, but it's information nonetheless, you know what I mean? And then when it comes to Rey, there's this massive mystery about who she is. Like, who is this character? Because she's incredibly powerful, and no other character in all of Star Wars has been this powerful except for, say, a villain, right? So it's like, how can she do these things? And then the reveal comes, obviously, that she's a Palpatine, and it's like, okay, right. That doesn't necessarily explain how you're powerful as you are, but, I mean, I guess I can go along with it. It's just a matter of, she's a character reveal. I mean, do you know what I'm saying? Like, she's just a character reveal.
I'm left thinking, why are they even called this the Skywalker Saga? Because what's the sequel trilogy even got to do with the Skywalkers? I mean, like, you can barely call Kylo a Skywalker. He's a Solo. Like,
Well, yeah.
it's such a stretch, and yeah, you're right. They've done nothing with Rey. It's all mystery, and it's like. Oh.
And if Finn's role, right? If Finn is meant to be Force sensitive, right? The potential of that character in another movie, say that he gets the Force and say that he becomes a Jedi as well, the potential we could have had for him would have been great, because he could have acted out that role that Rey had in The Last Jedi, because the reveal in The Last Jedi about Rey was, you are nobody, right? Your parents were junkers, they sold you for, you know, I can't remember what, but essentially Finn would act as that nobody who has the Force because he simply does. You know what I mean? Like that idea that anyone can have it, he embodies that. And then Rey could have been the character who was related to somebody, or perhaps, as I said, was a clone. And I think a clone would have worked way better for Rey than been related to someone. Otherwise, her entire character has just been, you are related to this person. And it's like, oh, that's why she's powerful. I guess, fine, whatever. It's annoying, because it just means that your protagonist is only there to be a big jaw-dropping reveal. There's no other reason for her to be there. I know I'm rambling. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because it inevitably means that she's uninteresting, and I want an interesting protagonist. That's nothing against Daisy Ridley, because her performance is fine, and everyone's performances in this movie, and the other movies has been fine and good and great. Some of them better than others. As we said, Lando was really good. I think Adam Driver in this movie was really good. I think Poe as a character was really fun in this movie. And as you said, we learned things about him in this movie that made him more interesting. Why we learned about them in this film perplexes me. But the simple fact that our protagonist, our main protagonist, is revealed in the final movie to be related to the main villain of Star Wars, and that we're meant to go along with the fact that that's why she's as powerful as she is. To me, that's a stretch. And it's annoying from a writing perspective to think that she's literally there to basically garner in conversation. I guess that's the way of saying it. She's just there to have a conversation. I don't know. I don't know what you think about it, about her, but it's not, again, it's not that I hate her, it's just that's what it feels like. It just feels like she's there to simply be a reveal, you know?
Yeah, well, it's like they clearly just did such a stupid thing in Last Jedi. Her heritage should have been revealed in Last Jedi. That's that, really.
Yeah.
Or some better hint to it anyways. That's why, yeah, like making her a clone makes sense, because it was set up.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a cryptic clue, but at least there's some breadcrumbs there. There's not a lot of breadcrumbs for her to be a Palpatine or the return of Palpatine. Like, there's nothing. It just happens, and so I think, yeah, it does feel a bit cheap. It almost would have worked better if she was a Skywalker at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it would have. Even if she was I still think the clone would have been fine if she was a clone of Skywalker. It doesn't really matter, but, it still would have worked better if she was anybody else, literally anyone else. But, anyway, I mean...
Again, we just needed more time, and I think even the fact that we're introduced to two, like, new characters who are interesting, Yana and Zora Bliss, but we get hardly any time.
And what's that little guy's name? I keep forgetting it.
And Babu Frick, yeah, he's adorable. I love him.
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, yeah, he's just your porg. He's just your little cute guy who makes funny sounds. Everybody laugh at him and think he's cute. I mean, yes, he is just that stereotypical character. But still, he's still enjoyable. I mean, yeah, he's more of a guilty pleasure part of the movie, you know what I mean? But again, it's just... I don't know where to start, man. The characters, it's just like... As you said, there's these new people, and they're all interesting people, or they should be interesting people, but they're chucked in at the last movie, and it's like, why are you here?
Yeah, I mean, you look at... Yeah, Revenge of the Sith, or Return of Jedi. There's no, like, big characters that are thrown in your face that, like, play such a major role in helping.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at... There's villains, right? Like, if you look at Return of the Jedi, Jabba the Hutt is the only... Like, he's mentioned, and he's the only real major appearance in it.
I was going to say, though, but Jabba the Hutt's set up in the first two movies. So that's not really an added character that comes out of nowhere.
So if you think of the prequels, then that could be General Grievous, right? And that's why General Grievous feels so wasted, though, in Revenge of the Sith, right? Because you watch Revenge of the Sith and you go, oh, General Grievous is really cool. He looks awesome. Same as Darth Maul. And then he's killed off. And you're like, what the hell, George? Why did you chuck another really cool character into this movie to have them killed off so quickly? And that's maybe how I feel about these characters. It's, again, like that idea of, these characters seem cool. I love the way Zori Bliss looked, and she had the dual pistols, and like that outfit was really cool. And I was like, man, she could be really awesome. But she's in the last movie, and she's in it for like 10 minutes. Like, she probably has a maximum of 10 to 15 minutes of screen time, and that's it. Yeah, and then Dio, who's been advertised like crazy, is the same thing. He's in the movie for like a little bit, and then it's like, all right, next.
Yeah, he's voiced by J.J. Abrams, and he's just there to sell more toys.
It's the same thing, and I'm like...
I mean, I loved him. He was pretty cute as well, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, but what's the point?
And then they give more... I think that, to your point, they give more to a character like 3PO, right? Who has much more in this movie. And it's great to see 3PO have more. At the same time, I personally think he gets a little bit annoying. Like, they go a little bit far with him at times, but... I think that's why some people like the fact that he's in it more, right? Oh, sorry, some people like him because he's in it more. Because we haven't gotten that much 3PO in The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. It's like they've decided to chuck more 3PO into this movie. But then R2-D2's shafted. And it's like... And he's been shafted this entire trilogy. And it's like, I know you guys want to put BB-8 in my face. And you've done it a lot. And that's fine. But... where the fuck is R2? Sorry about my language. Where is R2?
Yeah, BB-8 has definitely replaced R2, and I think the reason why C-3PO is here is because it's the last time C-3PO is going to be in a movie, and so Anthony Daniels has played him in every Star Wars movie. He's the only actor that's reprised the same character in every single Star Wars film. So they obviously just wanted to give him like, one like a big role, role to go out.
Yeah, but in terms of characters, obviously R2D2 and C-3PO have appeared in every Star Wars movie, and they give a lot of love to Chewbacca in this movie as well. Chewie does a lot of good stuff. I mean, he also gets captured, and that whole capture thing is really weird and fast, and it's very unusual for me, that scene. Like, it's not that it's weird or dumb, it's just that it happens so quickly, and then he's saved very quickly that it's kind of...
I was saying the reveal that Chewie was still alive, why is there that shot on the Star Destroyer saying, "Oh, we've captured a prisoner"? How come they didn't just wait to Kajimi where they step out and Rey goes, "Chewie's on that ship"? That should have been the reveal. Why do they have that shot on of Chewie being alive? Because they didn't want people to walk out the theater. Yeah.
Because the minute he did presumably die, like they did the fake death, I was like, Rey, did you just kill one of my favorite Star Wars characters? Because I'm going to be really pissed off if you did. And then it was like...
Yeah, and then...
Yeah.
And then they have this shot on the Star Destroyer, but I think in terms of a reveal, just to save it a bit longer, it should have been where she goes, senses Chewie on that ship, because that's like a really powerful moment for the Allies. But it's like, well, yeah, as an audience, we already know he's still alive, so yeah.
I agree with you. I totally.
So agree. I think for me, I think cutting that scene out would have made that a lot better. Just that one scene.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the same thing again. I mean, you can tell that they're trying to push the new characters into the forefront and take a backpedal or backstep on the older characters. And personally, that kind of frustrates me because when you look at something like the prequels, say for example, obviously there's such a major focus on Anakin, right? Being a hero, being a protagonist. But they develop Obi-Wan. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say Ewan McGregor comes into his own until Revenge of the Sith, when he really masters the role of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And obviously they chuck Chewie into the Revenge of the Sith, but 3PO and R2-D2 I think are used well enough in the prequels to the point where I'm like, yep, this is a pretty good amount, where they're also showing me characters I know from the original trilogy who are now being developed, right? Whereas in this, it's like, okay, so here's R2-D2, here's C-3PO, even here's Chewbacca. Because if you look at Chewie in The Last Jedi, he really doesn't do anything. But here are these characters. But we're really chucking our new characters in your face, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean that you completely ignore characters like R2-D2 and just kind of go, well, they're a background character, you know what I mean? It's like, the hell, man? Like, this is like one of your mascots, do you know what I mean? And I don't know if that's Disney with the merchandising side of things going, we want to make more money by throwing a new droid, D-O, into it. Like, it would have been way cooler if you could have seen R2-D2 and BB-8 interacting more. Like, if this is the new R2-D2, seeing a rapport between these two droids would have been nice and refreshing, and it would have been cool to see R2-D2 involved. You know what I mean? Otherwise, he just sort of sits there. Like, he just sort of sits there and beeps.
Well, I do like how R2 stays with Leia, right? Because it's meant to be, he stays with one of the original characters, yeah. So, he's by Leia's side. So that's the point. But yeah, then he just kind of stays on that planet and does nothing the whole movie, and you're like, oh, well, I guess I've never seen him again.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice that he stays with Leia, but at the same time, we haven't even seen him fly in these movies.
Yeah, but I think the reason why they're not doing the flying thing is because some didn't like the fact that he was able to fly in the prequels.
Are you kidding me? What are you talking about? What about Return of the Jedi where he gets that little spinning buzzsaw out and cuts the net? Like, it's R2, he's ridiculous. Like, that's what we love. And BB-8's doing the same dumb shit anyways. What's the difference?
I mean, I know that. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that some fans don't like it, and as we know, Disney and the filmmakers, once again, because I can't, iron out or speak to any single person, have decided to listen to certain groups of people and write based on their opinions, really. So I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's just one of those things where I personally think they spent too much time trying to do things safely and make money, and didn't spend enough time thinking about, hey, does this actually make sense? To be real with you. Anyway, we probably should get... Sorry, you going to say something?
Yeah, I think this sequel trilogy had the potential to be something really great, I think, and Force Awakens did a good job of, making, like a pretty solid film, like, it's pretty good, and yes, it's reminiscent of A New Hope, and it's very nostalgic, but where we could have gone from there, like, it had the potential to really do anything, and I just think if they just had a better plan from the get-go, and they gave J.J. Abrams a bigger role in Last Jedi, maybe even just had him direct the whole trilogy from the beginning, I think we really could have had something solid and coherent. No, it wouldn't be a masterpiece, but it would make more sense. I truly believe that. But yeah, I think we've said enough, so we can wrap it up if you want to.
I think we can wrap it up.
Give your final score. We're scoring out 10
yes,
now.
Just to let everybody know that. We're scoring out of 10 now, not out of 5, because 10 is a little bit more leeway. Anyway, do you want me to give my score?
Yeah, you go first.
I mean, I've been thinking about this for a few days now. I mean, I wasn't predisposed to be disappointed or think that this movie was bad going in, and I didn't. I was ready to, I was thinking to myself, you know what, I'm just going to try and have fun, see if there's anything that surprises me. And I was surprised, but in the wrong way. And the more I've thought about this movie, the more I've realized that it just does things that I personally just don't like. That doesn't mean that I hate the movie. I don't think it's a horrible movie. It's perfectly watchable. To be honest with you, I don't actually think, in my opinion, it's as good as The Last Jedi. I know that might be a surprise, because I really don't like The Last Jedi. But
Look, I'll cut in there. I think The Last Jedi is a good movie. I really think it's a good movie. And it doesn't work as the middle film in a trilogy. That's the problem. And yes, there's characters like Holdo, which you could probably get rid of, whatever, blah, blah, blah. There's characters in the prequels you could probably get rid of. That doesn't matter. I think Last Jedi, especially, visually, is as well as a really interesting film. And there's new things in there. And yes, you have that whole side plot, everyone complains about Canto Bight. And the heroes fail, but at the same time, that's also kind of interesting, right? Because you've watched them go on this quest and they've failed. And I really don't hate that as much as other people. Yeah, the stuff they did with Luke is questionable, but then he redeems himself in the end too. And we have that here where he's the Force Ghost, and he says that I was wrong, right? He's like, I was wrong. I shouldn't have gone into hiding, whatever. It's the wrong thing to do. And people say, oh, that's going against Last Jedi. Well, no, that's Luke's character development now, because he had to change of heart at the end of Last Jedi. So I kind of like that. And yeah, and I think Last Jedi is a good film. And I think if they continue things from Last Jedi in this film, instead of trying to undo everything, it would have been a more solid movie.
Sorry. I mean, I think that Last Jedi is a mediocre movie for me. There's good in it, there's bad in it, and often the two of them kind of balance each other out. Because for everything that's great in that movie, there's something horrible or bad, in my opinion, that kind of really diminishes the overall experience. That being said, that movie at least has a coherent enough plot. There are things in it that, if avoided correctly, would have just made it a hell of a lot better, trust me. But when it came to this movie, it was just too messy and all over the place. So I'm going to give it a 4.
Ouch.
I think it's below average. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. To me, this movie is on the level of quality of Episode 1 and Episode 2, which I don't think are good movies. I don't think that this movie is horrible, as I said. There's fun to be had, like those films, but the more you think about it, never have I watched a Star Wars movie that has made me dislike other Star Wars movies or made me this sad. And I watched this and I watched it, and the more I thought about it, I went, oh man, like, why did they do that? So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think, it's sad. It really is sad. Like, sometimes I think about it, I almost want to cry. Like, it sounds stupid, but like, Star Wars has been such a big part of my life since I was a kid.
Same.
So it's kind of, it is sad. But honestly, the first time, I'll take you through my little thought journey.
Yes.
Yeah, the first time I watched this movie, I really enjoyed it. I'm like, okay, they did a great job here. I wasn't overthinking the plot. I wasn't nitpicking. I just watched it. I had a good time. When I watch a movie, I don't really analyze it as I go along. I watch it like I'm a child, yeah, which is what these movies are really made for kids, aren't they? Anyways, so I had a good time watching it. I came out of the movie. I'm like, okay, that was an 8 out of 10 movie. That was my initial score. Okay, then I went and saw it a couple of days later, second time. And I noticed the stuff how the end was a bit like Endgame, and then I noticed two other things. Like, okay, and I came up. I'm like, well, maybe it's a 7, right? And then so I lowered it by 1. I'm like, it's a 7. And I'm still talking to you and everything. I think it's So we've had this big discussion now, and I can point out all these problems. But for me, I still think it's an enjoyable movie. I'm actually would watch it again. I'm looking forward to watching it again. I'll probably watch, all the Star Wars movies in the trilogy. Like, I'm not gonna stop loving Star Wars, and as a fan, I'm gonna still enjoy these movies.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm still gonna enjoy it.
There's still something there to enjoy. I think. And I think for everyone, the idea of Star Wars and the Jedi and the lore has always been more powerful than the movies themselves. Because you think about the prequels, you think, oh man, Obi-Wan's cool, and Anakin's cool, and Mace Windu's cool, and all the Jedi and all that's cool. And then when you watch the movies, you're like, oh, this isn't cool.
Yeah, exactly. It's the world.
So, and the concepts here, you have nice concepts, you have cool concepts, you have cool characters, and yes, they're not told in the best way, but they're there, and there's things there to enjoy. So for me, I think this movie is a 6 out of 10. It's above average. I think it's an enjoyable film. For me, if it's below average, it's not enjoyable. I can't watch it again. Like, why would I waste my time with this? But I'm looking forward to going back to this movie and watching it again, even with all the issues. So for me, it's a 6 out.
No, that's fair. That's totally fair score. And I was there. If I had that feeling of just there for the fun, I would be right there with you. And I want to say that obviously it's subjective. It's a movie. But we're all still fans of Star Wars, and we still love the material, and we've all grown up with it. We've played most of the games, watched all the shows, you know what I mean? So it's like, we're going to love it anyway. It's just a matter of, well, some of it. For me, it's some of it. But regardless, it's all just opinions. And, people can formulate whatever thoughts they have on this movie and go see it and like it, and not like it, whatever they want. And I guess that's just what it's all about, Just enjoy it, have fun if you want, and if you didn't like it, you didn't like it.
Yeah, and please leave the cast, the actors and actresses playing the characters. Leave them alone. Leave J.J. Abrams alone. Okay, it's not his fault. I 100% guarantee none of this is J.J. Abrams' fault. He's a great director. None of it's some of it's Rian Johnson's fault, but don't attack these people, okay? Because at the end of the day, this is a big corporate entity, and we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And that's that. And so, yes, that's that. We'll be doing probably a Mandalorian review at some point soon, I think. And maybe a Star Wars Saga discussion.
We'll see how we go with that one. But definitely a Mandalorian one. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. This has been The Casual Simple, and we will catch you later.
Goodbye.